So today we are going to do something a bit special and try to predict what the next agent's abilities are. Now I should just come out and say that I don't have any more information than any of you do regarding this. All I've done is I've kind of gone through all the little hints and clues we might have got about this agent so far to try and predict what their next abilities might be. So let's just dive straight in, and we'll start off with this image here, right, which is currently available. If you go into the range, you can see this like on there. It comes up on like a little laptop by Cypher, who's just watching you now. It's kind of creepy, but we can probably get the first sense of what the first ability is going to be. So things that we know about this agent are that they're Indian, and they're likely to be a controller, and that they will be kind of, on the theme of water in general. And here we can see you've got this, what looks to be like a big wall of water, right? Like almost like a big smoke, a water wall there coming across and blocking the line of vision for these people here. And this is very likely, in my opinion, to be the E ability of the new agent, right? If they're going to be a controller, the E's of all the controllers are smoke, so I'm going to assume that this one will be no different, and this is somewhat a clue of what we can expect for the first ability. Now this to me makes sense to have a wall of water rather than just a dome smoke like most of the other controllers, because there will be a want to challenge Viper. Because for instance, our last agent, Fade, they mentioned that when they were designing Fade, when deciding what to make for Agent 20, we knew we needed someone who could compete with Sova. He has a sort of monopoly on reconnaissance in Valorant, and we wanted another agent that had similar strengths. So if that was true for Sova back then, and Fade came in to kind of compete with Sova in that space, it makes sense to me to make the next controller compete with Viper, because of course Viper has a somewhat unique presence in the game because of the wall smoke that she has, and you can see in like the pick rate of Viper that she has a very high pick rate. On Breeze and Icebox it's 100%, very high on Bind as well, and so Viper kind of has this monopoly on that space, and so it makes sense to make an agent to potentially challenge Viper. But if we go back in time a bit as well to patch 5.05, there was another voice note left in the range, and this is courtesy of Valorant Update, who makes very, very good videos indeed. And let's just take a look at what was going on here, and what Sky had to say about this ability.
I fished up these spent bullets from the water, fired west-east, but they're not scattered like you would expect. They dropped in a semicircle. Clearly, they were aimed at the same target, so you would expect some grouping, but this is too uniform.
So to me, this could either refer to two things. This could be referring to this water wall here, that this water wall is going to have some kind of bullet stopping abilities on the whole, and that's going to be one way that they differentiate these smokes to others, is that this will stop bullets, or maybe reduce the damage that you take from bullets as well. That could be one or the other, or it could be one of the separate abilities. To me, I don't quite know whether that would be the case, but it does make sense to have this kind of ability for this specific agent. One is that this would be a very, very good ability for the map Pearl. Have you ever wondered and thought, wow, this plant spot just down here is really, really good. Isn't it good if we could plant the spike here reliably? The problem is this box can be spammed through quite easily by the defenders, and so it's actually quite hard to get the spike planted in this spot, because obviously if you can get the spike planted there, you can come all the way back here, right, and just easily see like, oh, there's the spike. We can just sit back there and, play post plant from that position. The problem is, as I say, this box is pretty easy to spam, and you have to manage to cross all the way across here as well without the defenders shooting you, right? So having a wall smoke like a Viper, in this instance, obviously is going to help you cross across here, but also if there was an ability that, prevented getting spammed or reduced the damage that you were taking from bullets in general, this plant spot would make a lot more sense in the game. If there was an agent who could help you plant the spike right here, that would be pretty powerful on this map. And you might think, why does the map Pearl have anything to do with the new agent? Well, in my opinion, Riot has kind of shown this tendency, and this is true for the last map they released as well, that they will want the new agents to have a home map, a map where they can feel confident that they are going to be good on that map. And let's take the last map that they released, for instance, Fracture, and take a look at the next two agents that they released after releasing Fracture. What were they? Oh, they were Chamber and Neon. Shall we check the pick rates for Chamber and Neon on Fracture at Champions 2022? Oh, look, Chamber obviously very strong on a lot of maps, but only one map he has 100% pick rate on. And what is it? It's Fracture. And then the next agent released was Neon. Let's take a look at Neon's pick rates for all the different maps. Oh look, Fracture is way ahead of any of the others. So to me, it seems like there is this tendency of, okay, we want our new agent to at least be good on one map, right? Like, you know, let's get them one home map that we can feel safe that they're going to see some play on. Well, that makes sense for this agent. Maybe it will be Pearl is going to be the home map for this agent. And the way that that B site is designed, it makes sense to have a wall smoke where you can't spam through things to make it more attractive in general to get the spike down just there. And then maybe also playing for retakes on the opposite side with the exact same agent so that this new agent has a home map and it is Pearl. But then another reason that this also just makes a lot of sense to have a kind of bullet reducing wall is to do with design space and thinking about subclasses. So for instance, a lot of people will call Chamber a duelist, but Chamber isn't a duelist. Chamber is a sentinel with a subclass of duelist. Or Viper, for instance, is a controller with a subclass of sentinel. And this is a great way to think about design space in general, right? And how you can try to not have agents overlap with each other too much and try to make each agent feel unique in their own way is to think about it like this, right? That you can essentially design controllers, but some can be more duelist, like Omen is, right? He's more for himself. You can teleport further ahead of your team, right? You can just ult into their spawn, right? And get kills for yourself, right? He's more of a duelist. You can have more initiator based, or you can have more sentinel based, like Viper, which is to do with, you know, controlling areas and whatnot. But you can see that there is a gap here. There is no clear like initiator based controller who has initiator as their subtype. And to me, that makes a lot of sense because if you think about, you know, bullets not going through your smoke or whether it be a different ability either, that idea of, you know, you can't shoot through this is a great way of pushing up your team further up into a space, right? Very initiator-esque, if you will, that is going to help your team get further up into that space in general. And I think that that is probably what they're going for. That this agent, I would suspect, is gonna be a very, very heavy secondary type initiator because none of the other controllers really are that right now. And so we have the potential of the water wall and also maybe an ability that deflects some kind of bullets, or that will be the actual water smoke itself that the agent might use, and it's all just combined into one ability. We will see. I'm not quite sure about that. But now let's start theorizing about some of the other abilities that this agent could have. And for that, we're just going to start thinking about themes with water. What could water do in Valorant? And when you think of water, one of the first things I thought of was potentially healing, right? Or some kind of support, maybe even some kind of, you know, wet floor that slows you down or something like that. That was what kind of first came to mind for me, but I don't think that that's going to be the case for this agent. And I think one of the clues they gave us was actually from this article they made about Phoenix, where they talk about how, you know, with Phoenix's theme as fire, they didn't want Phoenix to be just a, you know, burn it to the ground, crazy pyromaniac. They wanted him to be more controlled. And I think the opposite might be true here, where they don't want this water character to be like, you know, a lot of other water-based characters in media, where it's, you know, helpful and supportive and I'm just here to, you know, heal everyone and stuff like that. I think that they will want this agent to be perhaps a bit more destructive in general. Another reason I highly doubt that this will be a healing agent or that wet floor idea is because of the similarities to Sage. I think obviously when you look at Sage, I think a lot of people might think that Sage is actually a water agent when they first come into the game, but obviously she is not a water-based agent. But obviously if you did have a kind of wet floor slow, it would probably look very similar to a Sage slow orb, right? Or the healing would look very similar to Sage as well. And so I highly doubt that they would want to kind of mesh that together and have these two kind of, you know, probably visually similar agents in terms of the color schemes and whatnot. I highly doubt that they would have similar abilities, as that might become quite confusing to new players. So if we're not going for something like healing, what could it be instead? Well, if we take a look at the card that we actually get, which is kind of a bit of a teaser in the battle pass, you can see here we have the lotus flower, which is to do with India, the national flower of India. And we have what looks to be here kind of like a whirlpool. And I think that this is perhaps a bit of a leak of one of the abilities as well, in that it would make sense to have a kind of whirlpool ability, maybe something that's, you know, somewhat reminiscent of an Astrosuck. Maybe it is even to do with more with tides, where it's a kind of push-pull effect, where, you know, you could either push a character back or pull them in instead, right? And have this kind of duality of ability if you wanted to differentiate it from Astra. Maybe that's one way. But I think in general, we will have this kind of Whirlpool or, pulling theme, in general here. For a third ability, what I'm thinking of is potentially something like a waterfall, where, some water will drop from the sky onto a certain area, and people caught within that area will be stunned. And I'm thinking about this because obviously if you've ever dived into a pool or, had water tipped on your head or something like that, obviously you get that kind of, water rushes up your nose and you get a bit groggy, and you don't know where you are for a second, right, as you try and like get your bearings back and whatever. And I think something similar could be a decent ability for a Valorant agent where, it's going to stun you if that water lands on top of your head. And for the ult, I think this is honestly pretty simple in general. I would expect something like this. It was actually kind of, theorized again, maybe teased a little bit in the Pearl official map reveal, where they talk, about a world on the brink of total climate collapse, again, linking to Pearl, and they show a tidal wave here, right? And I think a tidal wave just makes a lot of sense for the ult ability of this agent, a water-based ability. And I think this would probably most likely play out a bit like a breach ult, where it's kind of pushing you back. Maybe you get stunned by it. Maybe you even get pushed back up until, you actually hit a wall, right? And it just actually pushes you all the way out of that area. Instead of a breach ult, which kind of, sends you upwards, maybe it just pushes you back, like a tsunami would, for instance, where it's just taking everything with it and it's just pushing you as far back as you can into a wall. That is kind of what I expect, and maybe it stuns you as well. And again, that would fit into that kind of initiator-based theme in general for the subtype of this agent. And so that is my prediction for the next agent. We're going to have an Indian water-based controller who is going to have a water wall that may or may not be able to suppress bullets completely or reduce the damage from it. That might also be a separate ability as well. We'll have to see. We're going to have potentially a whirlpool type effect, something reminiscent of an Astrosuck. We're going to have maybe some kind of waterfall effect that, hits a certain amount of area and stuns people within that area. And then for the ult, we're probably going to have some kind of tsunami effect, which, will push people all the way out of an area and stun them as well. Those are just my thoughts. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think as well in terms of how this agent might play out. Let me know in the comments down below, and have a nice day.